Welcome to our first installment of 6-Year Snippets,
Yay.
a series we're going to be doing over these next 2 months, sharing bits and aspects about our process of growing and leading the church here at Stepping Stone Ministry. In this particular video, we're going to be talking about seminary. As you know, part of the 6-year plan has involved taking seminary classes part-time alongside doing ministry. And we wanted to briefly give you all a picture on how that experience has been for us and the things that we've been learning. So Richard, you want to start us off?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, seminary has been really great experience so far. Taking classes part-time alongside ministry has been a huge blessing because I realized that every time I take a class, I don't read books and ask questions in this theological vacuum, but I'm always thinking about how these topics can apply to students and real life situations. And also think about how I can be bringing those things into Stepping Stone.
Right.
And another great thing has been going to the Trinity campus for classes each summer and meeting other students who share the same passion for God and for ministry. And being away for part of the summer also allows me to check out other churches that are pretty different from Stepping Stone, and that's been a really valuable experience as well.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think it's been a good thing so far being able to take classes while serving the church at the same time. I think for me personally, it's been really easy for seminary to become this very academic experience in a good way for training and giving me a wealth of intellectual information about the Bible. But in the midst of that, it's actually been surprisingly easy for me to lose sight of my own personal walk and relationship with God with all that knowledge that's pouring in. So really doing ministry, discipling students, even preaching has really helped bring all this information to really practical levels in terms of applying and living it out. So it's been a process for me to work through and to appreciate, how do I appreciate really studying intensively and digging in, but also not neglecting my own personal direct prayer interaction with God as I'm writing and researching papers. So what's been your favorite experience so far in seminary?
I'd say one of my favorite classes so far has been American Church History. I loved reading about these inspirational stories of men and women just going all in for the gospel, and that class really challenged me to live more like them. And I think on top of that, one of the great benefits of history in general is that ability that we have to look back with this larger perspective and to learn from our mistakes. And one of the major themes that stood out to me in that class is how often we as people can be in some ways overly reactionary and jump too far from one side to another. That's one of the classic examples is with missions. And so a lot of the early missions work that came out of the US to other nations was very evangelistic in nature, but was lacking a lot in terms of being culturally engaged, honoring aspects of the native culture, which usually meant that there was also a lack of social care. And so the missionaries were mostly focused on preaching the gospel, not really as much focused on improving lifestyles. And so as a reaction to this, a lot of missions work started to overemphasize social work and care, and in some ways ended up losing their evangelistic roots. And so they would do a lot of social good and care for the people, but to a certain degree they would lose their focus on the gospel and bringing the gospel to people for true life and eternal transformation. And so this pendulum kept going back and forth over the years between the so-called social gospel and a more evangelistic missions model. And that's just one example, but there were many other instances where this perceived inadequacy or weakness on one side or the other led to overshooting and going all the way to the other side of the spectrum. And seeing that play out in history has made me more aware of ways that I can do this, ways that I see this happening in ministry, and it's allowed me to focus more on balance, hearing from all sides and trying to figure out the best way forward. So that's been really good for me. So any favorite experiences for you?
It's hard to pick. I think the Old Testament classes have been particularly helpful for me. In one of my classes, I memorably had to construct a paragraph-by-paragraph layout of the entire book of Leviticus. I was reading commentaries, really studying it in its historical, cultural context. Classes like that, I think, completely changed my understanding and perspective and appreciation for those books, really going from, okay, I have no idea what this book is about, why are we reading this, to, wow, really seeing and understanding God's holiness and also grace in the way that he relates to people in Leviticus. So that was really good. I think classes also really challenged me in terms of faith and doubting. coming into seminary, I think I definitely was the most skeptical, questioning, doubting person of the class. I didn't want to just accept the conservative evangelical answers to questions off the bat. I really wanted to question and mine at things until I could really believe it for myself. So some of those struggles were actually really in some real core areas, like inerrancy of Scripture or the Trinity, and or the interactions between secular historical research and the Old Testament particularly, which really caused me to struggle a lot. I have faith as I addressed all these opposing arguments that were very strong sometimes, and at times I was worried. I was like, am I going to even walk away from the faith? But even though they were so difficult faith-wise, it really helped actually rebuild a much more solid foundation and understanding of foundational truth and why I believe what I believe.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's not for sure. Yeah, so I think for both of us, time at seminary has been really formative and beneficial.
Right.
And we're both looking forward to continued education and growth in the Word. So that's all for this 6-year snippet. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions about our seminary experience. Let us know, too, if there are particular topics you want us to talk about in future installments. That's all. Bye.